Hi, this is Gayle with BERNINA of Naperville, and you know what? It is November. We're approaching the third Saturday of November, which means that it's time for Embroidery Sampler. It's our fourth month, everyone, and I am so excited to show you this month's. I think it is particularly fancy, but we're gonna have some fun this month. So this month we are working, I'm calling it the red one, and we're gonna have two motifs that we're gonna stitch out. It's the same design, you're just gonna do it on one corner and then the other. We're gonna play with altering a design, not just making it larger and smaller, kids. I mean, we are gonna go in there and reshape the quilting design. So you're gonna love that. And those of you without software, I can read your minds. Yes, you get a rescue file so that you can do this even if you don't have the software. But if you are software curious or you already have the software, well, hey, buckle up those belts here. Strap yourself into the chair and pay attention because I'm going to show you how to do some cool things. Along those lines, we're also going to make an applique design that you are going to digitize yourself. Well, there's also a rescue file for that. But this block, it's super cute. So we've got the stitch and flipped methods that we have been using and loving. So we're gonna do that, and I'm showing you how to alter that design because remember how the past few months the tack down stitch and the placement stitch are sort of right on top of each other, and so you get like a little bit showing. Nay, nay, not anymore, because I'm gonna show you how to alter it. I know, so many things. And so we're gonna start with that. Then we're gonna move on to the embroidery of the big flourish design. Then we're gonna stitch out our center applique piece, and then we're gonna add the quilting and the hoop. Now, the pièce de résistance is going to be using our mock hand quilting stitch. So we're going to put that in the coffers and learn how to do that. And then finally, we're going to do just a wee bit of stitch in the ditch because we're flipping this baby over and quilting from the back again. Do you got that? Did you take notes for this intro? You better, but you didn't really need to because we're going to get started showing you the details. All right, so here are our blocks that I'm going to show you how to make in just a minute, but there are 16 of them, like there are 16 every month, right? And so this time we have these glorious pinks, and there is a ruby and a flamingo. And these, I think they go really well together, and they kind of have like that holiday festive feel. And those are going to be 4 by 8 inches, and you are definitely going to only need 8 because I'm going to show you how you reserve some of the trimmings to conserve your fabric. Then this is what we call the crystal pink, and you're going to need 2.5 by 7 inches of those. Of course, all of these cutting instructions are in your handout. And then there is our ethereal pink, and we're gonna need, I think it's about 3 inches by 7 inches of those. And then we've got 3-inch squares of our white that we're gonna cut in half on the diagonal, just like that. And then from this one, we're just gonna cut a little scrap of it. And this is gonna be for an applique center that we're gonna use later. So, 4-inch by 4-inch square, just a little scrap. But first, let's see how we make the adjustment to the block so that we don't see that pesky placement stitch. So let's go ahead and have a look at our design for this month. This is the 12/7/36/04 from Piece to Perfection. And I'm going to go ahead and first things first, I'm going to change my hoop to my jumbo hoop because that's the one I'm using for this month. And then I'm going to say to hoop. And there is my design. So what I want to do is make sure that my design is broken apart, which it is. Just to make things easier, you could go through and just assign each one of these a different color. So I usually will just go back here and go to my thread chart and just say 50 colors. And then I get all of these different colors here. So I'm just going to take 2 and make that one pink and green. There's a rhyme and reason, I swear. And I'm just going in order down here. I just want them to have a different color because it's going to help me sort them later. Perfect. So now what I want to do is kind of zoom in here and select a color. So I'm going to select this pink color, and then I can actually use the arrows on my keyboard to move it. And I just want to move it so that design or that line there is in the seam allowance of my piece. Now I don't want to move it over too far because I don't want too big of a seam allowance, but there should be perfectly fine. Then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm using color film here, which is this button to press if you don't have this showing up. And now I'm going to pick my next one here. And I can just use my arrows again, just like that. Scroll down and see this one is going to be our placement. So you see here, this is how this is working. So that is our placement. That's our tack down. That's our placement. That's our tack down. So we're always moving the placement stitch, which we don't need to see, kind of into that seam allowance there. And now the next stitch, that's going to be our actual tack down. And there's our placement. So we'll move that over and down a little bit, just like that. And then the next color, number 23 there, is going to be our tack down stitch. There's another placement that we're going to move over and down. There we go. Perfect. So now that I've made that arrangement, I'm going to select all. To edit, select all. I can hit Control A on my keyboard, or I could draw a box around it. So now I'm going to zoom to the hoop again, and I'm just going to right click and drag this down. Perfect. And then this is the special thing that I want to do here is I want to make sure that when I get to this piece here that I move this to the top, and now these two pieces are going to stitch together. Then I want to take this piece here, it's that peach square I created, there we go, and I want to move that down to the bottom. So now what's going to happen is my no thread stitching, which is my piece here, that first one, that will just stitch everything together. Then it's going to individually do all of our little placement and tack down stitches. Then when we get to the end, it's going to stitch the final pieces all together. So now I just need to send this to the machine and I'm ready to stitch. If you don't have the software, but you still want to edit the design, it's totally possible to do that within your machine. Now, this goes for the machines that have the ungroup option on them, like the 590, 770 plus, 880 plus, 790 plus. You got it. All right, so here's our design, and let's do a little deep dive on it here. Of course, I want to change my hoop to the jumbo. There we go. But we're going to alter this block, and like I mentioned, we can either do that in the software or we can do it right in your machine. So we need to do a little deep dive here. I have changed my hoop to the jumbo hoop, and this is the design. And now all I want to do is select this I button. And if you notice, most of you are going to start off with this screen like that. But if you left click and drag, you'll discover a little ungroup area down here. Now we used this last month when we took apart that flower, but now we're going to do it for this. And so now we're going to ungroup. This is the ungroup icon there. And now we're going to see how we can click on all of these different tack downs and placements. So the first one is always going to be the placement, and that's the one that we're going to move, because we're going to move this out of the way so that it doesn't just stitch and then something else stitches on top. And sometimes we've been seeing those little lines, so this is just an easier way for us to avoid that. So we've ungrouped it, so now we're going to go to the eye and the breadcrumbs. And now all I want to do is go to our move icon and make sure that that's yellow. Now I'm going to select that, and I'm going to use my multifunction knobs to move it over and down just a little bit. So that's our new placement line. Then that'll be our stitch down line. So here comes another placement line, and we're going to move this one over and up. And now we're going to go to, that's our stitch down line, and there's another placement line. So now we're going to move this one over and up. And then we're just going to, and there's our stitch down or tack down, and there's another placement line. So we're just going to repeat this process so that we can kind of hide our pieces there in the seam allowance. And there's the stitching line. Here's a placement line. All right. And now there's that stitching line, and there's that one. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to glue this back together. So we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom there. And now we're going to go to the group icon, and we're just going to we're going to glue all of these stitches together. But we're going to leave this one and this one separate. And so now I'm going to close out. I'm going to select all, and I'm going to make a copy, and I'm going to drag it below this one. And now I want to select all and put it up there in the middle of the hoop. I may even want to kind of take this new one that we selected here and move it just a little further down. There we go. All right, so now what I want to do is ungroup my one that I just inserted. So I'm going to ungroup this. Then I'm going to go over into my eye in the breadcrumbs and use my resequencing tool. And I want to move this guy so that it lives with this one. And then I want to take this piece and move it so it lives with that one. Simple, simple. And then, of course, we're going to save it. And you can either save it onto your stick or onto your machine, however you would like. And now we're ready to stitch this out. So you can see here we've done our perforations, and we made the adjustments like you saw us do to the design so that we won't get any of those tack down stitches showing up anymore because we've moved them aside. So now let's see how we're going to piece this together. And the first color that we're going to place into position is red. And I'm lining up my edge here of this material about, generously over our perforation mark, and the same down here. Probably just a little over 1/4 of an inch because we moved those stitching lines about 1/4 of an inch. So now, just like before, I'm going to hold my thread and get started here. Now, what I'm going to do is take my scissors and cut right on that line, just like this. And because we gave this guy a close shave, we can reserve it because it's going to fit perfectly down here when we do the next block in our hoop. So one rectangle is going to give you 2 blocks. Our next piece that goes in is going to be this side. And I'm just lining it right up to the edge here. Now you can see the beauty of us moving those stitches because now that original stitch is hidden right there in our seam allowance. All right, so now I'm going to fold this guy over, and now we're going to stitch another placement line, and that's where we're going to line up the raw edge of our hotter pink color that goes on this side. So we're going to put this piece into place, but I'm just going to take a second to trim really close here because this gives us an opportunity to remove some of the bulk. And I've got my duckbill applique scissors to do this. We're lining that into position just like that. And now we'll fold this piece over, hold my thread and the fabric into position, and stitch. And now you can see on this side, we're going to take our reserves and use it on our piece below our hoop as well. So here we go, cutting this really close to the edge. Just like this. And now we can save this one for down there. And now I'm going to flip that other piece out of the way, and we have a placement stitch here that we're going to do. And then my scissors are going to come out, and I'm going to cut as close as possible to the edge here. And now we're going to line this guy up, and I like to cover all of that color there with my piece. Okay, so now we're going to fold this over and do a placement stitch. I like to take my piece and line my tip up with the center there so I know my little triangle is centered, and then stitch, and then I'll trim this stuff away later in just a moment. So now I just have to come in here and cut this piece away. Okay. Then I'm going to trim these little guys away, just leaving a generous seam allowance there on my block, but we don't want our other fabrics to get messed up down here on our other piece. So, all right, so eventually we're going to fold this over, but now we're going to go down here and do the rest of the pieces in the block. This is just, you know, we got 16 of these guys to do, and it's a lot of repetitive work, as you know, if you've made these other blocks. Now, remember last month how I had said, hey, you might want to consider cutting these out before you rip the stabilizer off and sewing them together? Well, I like that. So I'm going to go ahead and make 4 of these. So we're going to have 4 4 patches just like this that we're going to stitch together. Then we're going to stitch those 4 patches together to create our final block. Stitching was done. It was pretty easy. I left all the stabilizer on, but now the super fun part is ripping all of the stabilizer off. So that's going to take me a hot minute. So there's nothing better than sitting down with a nice Hallmark movie to finish the ripping, because you know, you just never know how those things are going to end. The only thing that we really need to do to our flourish design, that's it's from the Divine Flowers and Vines, it's 110221, is change the color. So we're going to go up here to our design, thread colors, and we're going to simply just take these pieces and assign them to their right color based on our thread chart. So color number 1 is Baccarat green, which is that 5115 color, and you'll notice that I'm looking in my Embroidery Sampler 2 thread chart. So I'm going to assign that. The next color is Country Red, which is 2101, and I'm going to assign that. And then we have white. And after that is the Spruce. That's 4515. And then the 1805, which is Strawberry. And then we have white and white again. And then we have our Mimosa. And then as we go down, we're going to do white one more time. And then our final one is Country Red. And now we're going to apply, okay, and see our design. Now, we do want to print this out because we're going to need to place this just so. And I love using my template sheets for this. So all we need to do is go up here if we want to see a print preview, just to kind of set up how we want everything to go. We'll go to Options. Always make sure that you do 100% of actual size. Then we're going to take our piece and kind of look at what we want to see. Do we want to see the hoop on here? Do we want to have a grid? Do we want to have any other information on here? And then once we say okay, it will show up. And sometimes if you want to see the hoop just to have that ratio, but what I like to do is go ahead now and close this. And I want to print on my template sheets, but obviously I don't want that third page, this page, to print on a template sheet. So I close, and then what I'm going to do is go over here and say File, Print, pick the printer that I want, and then I'm just going to say from pages 1 to 2, I'm going to print, and then I will put the top 2 sheets with my template sheets. And on my printer, I have to feed the template sheets through. But then once we do that, then we can go ahead and print the final page onto our regular paper, which would be File, Print, and then we go to pages 3 to 3. Okay, and then that will just print it on my regular piece of paper. I'm going to go ahead and create a new design, and I'm going to insert artwork. So here's this month's block in just drawing form. And of course, this is available for you in your handout that you already have. So I'm going to go ahead and just hide the hoop here. But what I want to do is go up here and change my measuring system to inches, or US. And then the block is really about 19 inches. So I'm going to just write 19 there by 19. There we go. And so Now that I have that piece scaled to size, I can start building some of my other elements. So for instance, I can take this and group it, and then I'm going to copy and place this into position on my design. And then I'm going to rotate it and see how I like it up here. I kind of dig it. I don't want it to get too close to the edge because we do have seam allowances and everything. And so once I get that into position, that's how I know, and that's how I'm going to stitch that out. Now, we didn't do much to this design here, but if you have a Bernina 5 series, you're not going to be able to stitch this particular design all in one go. We'll have to split it, and probably splitting it there will be a good thing. I'll get to that in a moment, but right now we're just kind of building the look and feel of the block. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to right click and drag to make a copy. Then I'm going to rotate this so that it's going around the other direction, and then just move this into place. And this is how I kind of designed my block and made it. I think that looks good. All right, so now we have kind of this area framed here. So then what I wanted to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn this grid on, and I wanted to create like a applique design sort of that would go over this piece right here. You know, it's not that I'm feeling, non-confident in my abilities here. I just kind of think I want to put something there. But I also want to make sure that I kind of place that quilting design that I'm going to do over here in the right way. So let's pull up that design. It was this one here, so I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to put it over here in my design and paste it. And you can see it's a little big, a little large for what I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink it just to a size that might be good here, like that. And now I'm going to use, you might have recognized this from some previous lessons, I'm going to use the wreath maker. And I'm going to change this to 4. And I'm going to line this up together nicely. And normally I would say, sure, I want to do this, but I don't want to do this right this very second. So I'm going to say no. Okay. Now I'm thinking it might behoove me to make this just a touch smaller so I don't head into my embroidery. See how it's kind of touching the embroidery over there? I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Let's see what it's doing down here. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So now what I'd like to do is take this piece. Let's go back. Make sure I'm selecting just this piece. Okay, and now see this shape that's created right here? I kind of want to make that my applique piece. So I'm going to deselect that, and I'm going to go into my digitizing drawer, and I'm going to just do my closed object. I'm going to go ahead and use, it doesn't matter what kind of stitch I'm using for right now, but I'm just going to trace around this, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer. So here we go, and I'm going to click. That was a left click. Here's a right click. Here's a left click, a right click, a left click, a right click, a left click, a right click, and enter. And then once I select that, I'm going to go to my applique and say convert to applique. And this is going to give me a placement, tack down, and cover. And I want to do, I'm going to double click this to open my object properties because I want that tack down. I also want a cutting line for the applique material. And then I like everything about this. So now I'm going to say apply and OK. So now this is going to give us a placement, a tack down, another tack down, and cover. So what's going to happen is this one stitches, we put the fabric down and it stitches this, then we trim, then this is going to kind of hold the ratty bits into place, and then this is going to stitch. Now, I can go ahead and take this and copy and say new design and paste and save this as applique center. And of course, I would save this in my embroidery sampler folder. And it's block 4. And that will be our center applique. So once that's done, and we have this piece, what I want to do is take this loop out. So remember how I didn't merge my pieces together? Well, I did that on purpose. So I want to keep the tip here and the tip there, but I want to get rid of this guy right there. So I'm going to go up to my reshape tool and I'm going to get rid of all of these pieces here. All right. So once you've done that, it's okay to deselect away. And now we're going to delete these other options. And we're going to say copy. We're going to select this one and copy and go to a new folder or go to a new design and paste. And then I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. And now this is another one of those items that if you have a Bernina 5 series, then you're going to have to do it in 2 hooping. So let's go ahead and make it for the 1 hooping first. So we're going to take our design and select it. Then we're going to go down here to our mirror merge and wreath. And it's already remembering that we did this 4 times. There we go. And I don't want to merge quite yet, so I'm going to say no. And now what I want to do is cut this in half. So we're just going to select these 2 and say copy, pick a new design, paste. And I'm going to just deselect and move this over just a wee bit with my arrows. There we go. That looks better. So now I'm just going to select this piece, and weld. And so now that's going to morph that together so it's all one piece. And now I'm going to rotate it. And now we can save this as our quilting for the 5 series. So File, Save As, and that's going to be the Quilting 5 series. Okay, so here I am on our other piece, so I'm just going to undo. And now I'm going to do that again, only this time we're making it for our 8 series. So I'm going to go over to my wreath making, mirror merge wreath making. And this time, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more so I can see what's happening. There we go. And now I'm going to click, and yes, I do. So now they're all smushed together, and now I can save file, save as. All right, so we have another thing that we need to do here, and that is split this design, because if we look at, let's say we're going to use our 5 series, and we're going to use the midi hoop. So you can see there that that doesn't really fit. So what we need to do is break this design apart. So I'm going to select it and right click and ungroup. And now I'm going to use a tool we've used before, the polygon select. And I'm just going to pop this around here. And there that design is. I can move it over like that. And that's how I'm splitting it. So basically what I'm going to do then is just temporarily cut this. So I'm going to say Control X. That just cuts it. It doesn't make it go anywhere. It just cuts it. And then I can save this as 5 series hooping 1. And we can look here. We see the Flourish MIDI hooping 1. Save. And then I can select this, delete it, and then paste. And then that puts the other design in here. And then we might need to just slightly rotate it a little bit so it fits in the hoop better, but there it is. And now we can save file, save as MIDI 2 or 1, whichever one you would want to stitch first. And then the one thing that I don't do, so what I do is I print my template of the whole thing before I would print the template of this whole design rather than 2 separate templates of this, because this whole design is going to show me where I want to place it. So you'll see that when we stitch this out. And so now we're going to send both of our files to the machine as well. And that applique is going to go right here in the middle. So the first hooping, I'm just going to take my large oval hoop and hoop this right up in the center and do that little touch of magic that's going to also get rid of some of the bulk on this block. So I've got my medium tearaway stabilizer, and I'm going to hoop this up, and then I'm going to spray this with a little 505 spray and just place my quilt top right in the middle here and put the applique into position. And I'll use pinpoint placement to really get this positioned the way that I want it to be. And I don't have to mark because the seam lines right here on my piece are going to be my vertical and horizontal lines that I need. So here's my little applique design, and the first thing that I just want to do is check for center and make sure that my needle is going to start right here on the center. You have seen me do this quite a bit. So I'm moving my needle using my knobs right to where I need it to go. But I'm not going to hit set because I want to check it based on where my little tips are. So now I want to make sure, ooh, that looks a little off. That looks a little off. Okay, so I'm going to go back here to center. Now I'm going to hit set, and it turns yellow. Now I'm going to go up here and turn my little dial so it's right there on that seam. Go down there. Ooh, it's on the seam. And I'm just checking my 4 corners. And shockingly, it's very tilty, but that looks good. So I'm going to hit this X mark, and then I'm going to get ready to stitch. Now my first color I can go ahead and do in the white that's on the machine, because all I want to do is add my basting box and I want to baste and then sew the tack down stitch for the fabric. And now this is going to be a placement stitch for my applique, but I'm going to do something else with this too. I have to bring out the big guns for this one. These are my super sharp, perfect scissors that I happen to love so very much. And I'm going to trim the bulk of this little seam out with these scissors. Here we go. And I'm going to leave about 1/4 inch inside this line. All right, so now we've got something a little bit flatter. And now, remember that piece that we reserved? That's right. I've backed it with some fusible woven, and now we're going to place this down. And now we're going to trim really close to the edge. Now it's time to change to our bobbin fill and our top cover thread, which I've picked 1805, which is the strawberry red. So now it's just going to do our cover stitch, which is a satin stitch, as you saw me design in the software. Now this comes out of the hoop, and we have 2 more traditional embroidery hoopings, but it's a doozy, so get a cup of hot cocoa and a good book while you stitch that one out. This is like a rinse and repeat of block 2, which was our yellow block with all those pretty embroideries around it, where we're going to repeat this again, but this time I want those of you with a 5 series and smaller to listen up, because I'm going to do my first block over here doing it with my jumbo hoop and my 880, because this is actually a 2 hooper if you have a jumbo hoop. But then for those of you with the 5 series, I'm going to do a 2 hooper over here so that you can see how you would do this. Does that sound fair? Okay, good. All right. But I need to take my template piece that you saw me print, and I'm printing this on, fuzz. And I'm printing this on the template sheets here. And the first thing that I need to do is peel back some of this paper. And line up my pieces so it is totally even with the other piece. There we go. There we go. All right. So now I've connected my 2 sheets together. Then I can go ahead, and what I don't like is all of this extra paper. So I am just going to cut around and get just as little paper around it as possible. Now, I'm being very easy on those of you that are going to have to do this in multiple hoopings, because this design goes together nicely even if it's not perfect. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's peel this paper back. There we go. All right, so now I want to take this and just place this exactly how I want it to be seen here on my quilt. I like it just like that. What do you think? Okay, so I'm opting to put 2 layers of medium tearaway stabilizer in my hoop. I initially was thinking, you know what, maybe wash away would work, and it would. I just don't want to have to keep like getting this wet or whatever. So I'd rather peel this off rather than wash away. Because, you know, if you don't wash away that stabilizer, when you iron it, it'll shrink. And I don't want that happening. So I'm just going for this route for right now. Then I'm going to spray my hoop. There we go. And now I'm going to place this in my hoop, getting it right nicely in the center. And hopefully everything is going to fit in here and it will be lovely. So I've placed it in here like so. And now we're going to take it over to the machine and baste it. Here is my design right there in the hoop. Everything is stuck together like I want it. I did go ahead and just baste based on, you know, a rough practice so I could show you the right way to do this. And this way it'll hold everything in my hoop nicely. But we're going to start with opening up our pinpoint placement. And this time I'm going to use a different pinpoint placement. You know, there's the grid version, but I'm going to use that little butterfly with the little tip version. And the reason is I'm going to take my fingernail, you could use your stylus for this, and I'm going to touch really close to the tip of that leaf right there. In fact, you can even zoom in on your tools to see. And that piece right there is right at my leaf tip. So now that allows me to use my multi-function knobs and move, and I'm going to put my foot down so I'm really in there. And this is going to allow me, oops, I went too far over. Okay, so then I'm just going to tweak this. Now this design is a little large, so there is a slight delay in moving it around, so just be a little mindful about that. Another thing I want to encourage you to do is not stress, because this design doesn't have to be perfect with the other side. Okay, so I like the way that is. I'm going to hit set. That's going to turn my little knob yellow. I'm going to zoom out, and now I'm touching the tip of this leaf that's right down here. Okay, so now I'm going to move it to the side. And then up. I'm pretty happy where this has landed, but another thing that I like to do now is just touch another point on my design just to make sure that it's kind of close to where I want it. And this looks absolutely perfect. So I'm going to close and I'm going to thread up my first color. And my first color, after I hit the basting, of course, and baste, because you're going to baste at this point, is my 5115. And now, of course, we don't want to stitch through our template. And even though we're going to do our next side using a 5 series and smaller hoops, we're going to need this one for reference. So we're going to put this aside. Okay, so I had a little accident on this thing and I had to like try to line it up as best I could. I'm not going to fret over it, but why do you think I had an accident? It wouldn't have had anything to do with this little guy flopping around here and not having my thread away turned off, right? Wouldn't have anything to do with that. So remember, when you have floppy bits in your hoop, you are going to turn off your thread away so that when it moves around, your foot doesn't get stuck under your little floppy doos. Another thing we could have done is done the expert tape here, but sometimes it doesn't hold well enough to prevent that. So turn off thread away for this item. Look at it, it's cute. Even though we had a little oopsie, it still looks good to me. So this is gonna come out, and now let's go over here where I'm gonna show you how to do this on your 5 series. Here it is. And then I removed all the stabilizer and the basting stitches out from here. So now it's time to focus putting our design over here. Now I'm going to use that same sticky template that I used here to line things up here, but I am going to use 2 hoopings. And these hoopings are going to be out of our midi hoop. Now the midi hoop fits all of the Berninas starting with the 5 series and up. So if you're doing this and you saw me print the additional templates for your 5 series midi hoop sizes, you're going to split this design in 2, but we sort of need to know how they fit together. So I'm going to take our design here and line it up just like I did over here. Getting things in the spot. Just about like that looks good to me. And then the idea is that we're just going to use this, but this is going to be like hooping 1. So then when we hoop this up, we're going to line up for here. So I'm just going to give this a little spray. There we go. And now I am hoping to stitch this guy out first. So I'm going to line it up the best I can in the hoop. And I'm going to use that pinpoint placement and everything just like I did before, knowing that it kind of splits it here like that. Let's see if this works. I might have to reposition once I get it to the machine, but let's go for it. All right, so I'm ready to pick my design. And hey, you know the drill here. I'm opening up pinpoint placement, and I'm going to touch this top leaf right here. And then I'm going to move my knob to get it right on the tip of that leaf. All right, so it's there, but you might notice that we've got like this red ring here. Well, don't fret about that quite yet. I'm going to move down here. I'm going to hit set. And I'm going to move down here. And now I need to make this go right to this tip. So I'm going to move it over. To match the dot. There we go. And now I'm ready to stitch. So now what I'll do is after the stitches, I'll put this back on, but I'm going to take it off because we don't want to stitch through our paper. I'm going to close and stitch this out and select basting because I want to baste this into position. Oh, we don't want to have another car crash here. All right, so I'm learning from my mistakes here. So I'm taking a little bit of our expert tape and I'm going to cover this little raw edge seam that's right there, just so it's harder for my foot to get stuck under there. And now I'm going to thread up my first color, which is that 5115 again, and we're going to stitch. Well, this one felt like a breeze to stitch out compared to our other one, I have to say. But you can see here, it stitched out half of it. So now I'm going to remove this from the stabilizer just like we did our other piece. And then once I have all the stabilizer removed and everything, I'm going to hoop 2 more layers of the medium tearaway. And then we're going to line up our template again and get things situated. We're going to line up our template just like it's stitched right here, which is just perfect, perfect, perfect. Just like that. So now that gives us a place that I can take my 505, spray the hoop, and then we're going to line this piece right up in the middle of our hoop, doing the basting and all of those things just like before. But you can see how easy that lines up with our previous stitching. So back to the machine. All right, so I'm going to pick the other part of my design. Which is this piece right here. And I've got to get it lined up here. So once again, I'm going to use my pinpoint placement. And I am going to touch the butterfly and touch the tip of my leaf just there. And now use my knobs. And I put my foot down as well. That's helpful. All right, that looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to say set. Now I'm going to try by touching this leaf right up there at the tip here. So now I'm going to move that over. And down. All right, so now I just need to check my other tips to see how everything else is looking. And it's amazing. I love it. I'm ready to stitch it out. So now we're going to go to the stitching screen and I'm going to add my basting box. I'm going to thread up my machine. The first color is going to be my 5115 again, and I'm almost done with this portion of it. So this is just very easy with the pinpoint placement, but it's just time consuming, okay? So prepare yourselves for that. So let me go ahead and get this stitched out. Okay, I want to do something a little bit fun. Let's be adventurous, okay? So let me put the backing on here. You can see this is our finished embroidered piece with the batting on. And now I'm going to turn this over. And now I redesigned the quilting design to go in here. So those of you with a 5 series, this is going to be a 2 hooper, but everybody else, it's going to be 1 hooping. And I altered it just a little bit to go around our medallion. Now I'm going to show you how you're going to do this using your 2 hooping method. But I think those of you that are using a 7 and an 8 series, you know, to just stick it in the hoop and get it done, right? I'm also picking a different thread in the machine. So I'm going to pick this spruce color and I'm going to wind a bobbin for the back and for the top, just for this one little quilting design. The rest of it, I'm going to use our cerulean thread that we've been using. All right, so I'm going to use the midi hoop for this, and I am using my 880, but don't be alarmed. I'm doing this as a 2 hooping, so it's going to work the same as on your 5 series. So this is going to be done on the diagonal. So I'm going to hoop just this half of this piece right here. And on here, we're using the tips of our embroidered patch as our registration mark. So I'm just going to try to get that kind of centered up in there, and, you know, love the ratchet system on my midi hoop. And if it's not perfectly straight, somehow we'll manage with our pinpoint placement, right? So this is a tight fit with all of that embroidery and everything. So if you wanted to float it like we did the other things, you could, but I was able to muscle it in the hoop here. So now we're going to take this over to the machine. Now, if you're doing this on your Bernina 880, don't forget that you're going to thread this for regular sewing because we're doing quilting. And then for all of you out there, 5 series, 7 series, 8 series, you're going to adjust your upper tension to about 4. All right, so we're going to pick our half design here, and then I'm going to use the grid pinpoint placement, which is this one right here, and I'm going to touch right here in the middle and then move my needle to where it's right in the middle of our applique piece. Perfect. Okay, I like that, and now I'm going to say set. Now I'm going to go across the street, and I got it a little crooked, but we don't care because we have things, right? Okay, and I'm just going to test it and see if things are lining up where they should be. So I'm going to say set. Now I'm going to touch that one and touch that one. And I think it needs to be moved just a wee bit over here. Let's touch that. And do you see what I did? I used my multi-function knobs to just kind of move it once I got that angle. So I'm going to touch it again there, and then touch it again like over here in the middle somewhere. It looks pretty good. And then now let's check our tips. And what we're doing right now is called virtual positioning. And that is really exactly the way that I want this to stitch out. So now I've got my thread in the top and bottom the same. My tension I'm adjusting to 4 because this is a quilting stitch. I've got my bottom tension adjusted for in regular sewing rather than embroidery, and that's because I'm using an 880 plus. If you have a different machine like the 5 series or the 7 series, you don't need to pay attention to that. But I'm going to use my thread up command after I get started over here. Pull my bobbin thread up, there it is, and now press the go button. Okay, so for the next piece, I need to line up here and just there. So out of the hoop and rehoop. So now when you're working with pinpoint placement and you want to stitch again, I go to the I button and I make sure I make everything that has a yellow ring around it go back to normal, just like this. Then I'm going to hit that pinpoint placement again, reset it, make sure everything back here is normal. Then I'm going to go to the butterfly like this, and I'm going to touch my first dot just there, and now we're going to move this guy over right to where this needs to stitch. That looks good. Now I'm going to go down here And now we need to move it, oops. Over and down, like that. And now all I want to do is just check the tips, make sure they're happy. And I think it looks good. So let's hit the button, get ready to sew. Thread up command to pull that bobbin thread up. There we go. So this is pretty cool because it lined up really well right there and really well right there. Now I'm gonna not joke around with you here. I want to show you. I probably could have tried a little bit harder to get my embroidery just right on each side, but you know what? I don't care. I don't care. I did quilt into this embroidery right there just a little bit, but it does not ruin my quilt at all. I might have also tried to resize my design a little bit so it didn't go over on here, but in the greater scheme of things, I'm really happy with that. So don't torture yourself, don't beat yourself up over this. This is perfectly acceptable. So now all I have to do is draft a plan for some of my straight line stitching that I'm going to do and some more of the quilting from the back. Okay, so I've decided what I'm going to do. So in this area here, I'm going to stitch down the middle and 1/4 of an inch away from the white piece and 1/4 of an inch away from these points. And I'm going to use the mock hand quilting stitch. And I'm going to keep that spruce in my bobbin case so that I have that pretty hand quilted look. And then I'm not going to do anything in the white area. So that's going to go here and here. And then I'm going to turn the work upside down, dun, 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 and stitch from the back. So that means that I'm going to have to go around my embroidery designs, free motion, just the blob that I don't want to stitch through. So I'm going to do that. So let's go over to the machine and quilt this baby. This is Cerulean in the top, the white eggshell, and that spruce color in the bobbin. And what I did that I think is so awesome is I used my multifunction tool. Remember this, 8 series users? And I loosened my bottom tension 2 notches to the left. And now this is perfect, and I'm going to do my real thing. So I marked my pieces with the water-soluble pen, and I'm going to go in the middle first. So this is just like a little perimeter around the square here. Okay, so I'm just going to keep this right on that line. And I'm using my 20D foot. Needle down is engaged, so I'm stopping right at the corner, and I'm lifting and pivoting, just like this. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to lift and pivot again. Now, benefit of this stitch is that it's secure, so I don't have to do any back stitching or anything like that. Okay, so here we go. So now I'm going to trim these threads, but I'm not going to unthread my machine or whatever. I'm just going to lift my needle out of here, lift my presser foot, And now I'm going to hop over and start right on the inside of this line here. So I might actually take my needle and put it right down before I lift my foot. There we go. And now I'm going to run my piece right up with the inside of my toe. Like that. There we go. Perfect. So now what I want to do is go from the inside of my toe here, right on this side, starting at this corner. There we go. There we go, and now I'm going to lift and pivot. There we go. There we go. Same thing here. And then we're just going to repeat on the other side. So I've got my stitch regulator on, and I got rid of my blue lines here. I might need to give it just a little bit more of a squirt there. But now I'm ready. There's cerulean in the top, there's cerulean in my bobbin, and don't forget to put your bobbin case notch back to normal if you're using the Bernina 880. So all I want to do is just find a path around my leaves here, my leaves and my embroidery motif. So I'm just going to go slowly, let my Bernina stitch regulator do the work as far as keeping my stitches even. And then I'm just gonna find a nice little path around here. And if I have a flower, I'm going to go around it because I don't want to quilt through a flower necessarily. But I want to try to not stitch on the embroidery, which is what I'm doing right now. Okay, here we go. And I'm not going to go into every little cranny of the embroidery either. So I have my piece upside down, and I'm just picking my path like we did on month 2. I did take the time to just very roughly stitch the perimeter of my quilt here, and I also stitched in the ditch with the stitch regulator just a little bit, you know, because there are just certain no-sew zones that I didn't want to go in. There's not a lot of quilting to do on this one now, and you can see I'm working on my 880. This is my embroidery arm here. It's moved all the way over to the side. I didn't take it off for this application, but now I'm just kind of picking this path and just going, and I'm not afraid to over sew where I once was because I'm using my fine thread that works very well for this application. But I'm also trying really hard not to sew into those no-sew areas that I designated when I did my stitching around our embroidery motif. Okay, so here is our finished product. Now, you know I like to serge the edges. I haven't gotten to that yet, but I did my mock hand quilting stitch. I stitched in the ditch and around the perimeter of the embroidery so I could do this quilting from the back, and I do think it always gives it such an awesome texture. You can see what it looks like on the back there. And hey, hot diggity. We're 4 down now. And hey, just a reminder, next month, there's no fancy backing. There's going to be a plain solid backing. So you only need 8 pieces of this backing fabric that you got in your kit. So yes, you don't have enough to do 9, but you have enough to do 8. Anyway, so this is done. It's going to go in the bin, and we'll have something new coming around the corner in December. That was a lot to take in, wasn't it? Well, don't worry, because this video is going to live on YouTube forever. And it's also not too late to join. So if you want to sew along with us once a month, you can start at month 5. Why the heck not? And then fill in the other blocks as you go along. So you're just going to go to BERNINAofNaperville.com. There it is. Search for Embroidery Sampler 2. TOO, and then sign up. Now, we do this a couple different ways. There is just the files, but then we also have the kit. I highly recommend you do the kit because you get all of the fabric. It's exactly certain colors that we go through every month, right? Then it is, you get all the thread, and you get the two design collections of files that we use. So it's really going to save you a lot of work. Plus, we've picked out those awesome backing fabrics where we're quilting from the back from, and you have some different choices for your colorways. Our dark blue background isn't available anymore, but there are some others that might tickle your fancy. And you just need to add the batting and get the stabilizers and all the little odds and ends each month, but you might want to check that out. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this tutorial and you'd like to see other tutorials like it, don't forget to check out our Bernina of Naperville YouTube channel if you haven't already. It's youtube.com/Bernina of Naperville, and there you can like, comment, and subscribe. All right, get to work, everybody.